Welcome back, my friends, to the Moto Guzzi show that never ends. It's hello from him. It's hello from Guzzi Dog, who's not here herself, but she's here in spirit, although she's a few thousand miles away. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk about this motorcycle here, which is a Moto Guzzi 1000 SP from 1979. Now then, this is another COVID project of mine, a bike that I rebuilt during the COVID fiasco that enveloped Britain. Couldn't go anywhere, so I thought, well, I might as well renovate a couple of bikes. So this is how I bought her. She was in a right state. The corrosion monitor from North Nottinghamshire would have a fit with this one. He'd be writing reports forever. Yep, she was well and truly rusted. She'd been under a tarp by the seaside for about 11 years. Notice the ridiculous king and queen seat, the corrosion in the wheels, disc buggered, footrests corroded and hanging off, the bottoms come off the center stand, and she was in a right state. But I bought this one with the intention of not paying too much, and if the bike was not salvageable, I thought, well, I can always get another frame for it, stick it on, that's not too hard a job. I'm really concerned about rebuilding the engine, what that would cost. But anyway, we stripped her down and I decided I would go ahead and rebuild it. It wasn't that bad. I would say to anybody who's attacking a bike like this, just to be very, very careful, because I don't think I would bother with another badly corroded bike again. But that's just me. Unless it was a very, very rare machine, which these aren't particularly. Okay, so next picture, she's on the bench, and you can see how bad she is. Headlight is all rusted out. The brake caliper was taken off so that the bike would move. Nothing salvageable from the brakes, really. This is the extent of the corrosion again. The through bolt on the front of the engine was corroded in, could not be removed, and I had to cut the engine out of the frame, and then I took the front cover of the engine to an engineering shop and they drilled out the long bolt. This is the back of the engine after the gearbox had come out. You can see profuse oil leaks from the gearbox and the engine. Right mess. Corroded frame again. This is the frame, and as you can see, she was a rusty bugger. But we took her down and had her sandblasted. I was hoping that they would powder coat her for me, but they didn't. So in the end, I etch primed her, gave her a good coat of priming and several top coats. Didn't want to ever see rust again on this frame. Front of the engine, cam chain tensioner had worn out and gone, bit mucky. This is the sump. There was 1.5 inches of solid sludge in the bottom of the sump. It would not melt it with gasoline or with paraffin, so I had to scrape it out with a paint scraper and screwdriver every last little bloody bit of it. Took a lot. So for those of you who like to buy old bikes and do YouTube videos, will she start, can we get her going, just don't get old engines going. Just leave the bloody things alone, do a complete strip, find out if the engine is in a reasonable condition and if you can even get it going. Just don't forget, if there's this much sludge in the sump, there's also going to be sludge in the sludge trap. These are the cylinders. They were heavily corroded too, but not too bad. Particular to the 1000 SP, they have cast iron liners, so they don't have the chrome liner problem that other bikes do of that era. These are standard size. The bores weren't too bad, although they were longitudinal scores in them, which were caused by poor air cleaners allowing crap in. And by crap I mean particles that were big enough to score the cylinder walls, and this bike was fitted with K&N filters, and it's something I never do is fit K&Ns. I think they're garbage, and that goes to the DNAs and other kind of filters. They give you more power because they allow more air in, but they do less filtration, and they only really begin to filter the air efficiently when they're half clogged. So I avoid them like the freaking plague. But anyway, the racing shop where I get my engine work done down here said they're not too bad, they're good to go. It's not worth doing a rebore, and I don't even know if you can get oversized pistons for Guzzis. It would have been this, or take her to Nicosil barrels from Giardoni or one of the other companies. And I didn't really want to go to that expense because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with the bike. But anyway, the racing shop were confident that a new set of piston rings and she would bed in okay, which seems to have been the case. The heads were done by the same people. Here I am getting the last remaining fumes of the bad gas out of the tank. The tank has holes in it where the badges were, and one or two other pinholes which had to be brazed. But I probably could have welded it the way it was, but I just didn't want to take any chances, so I just steamed it all out on a nice frosty morning. Here's the engine. The block was heavily corroded, so I decided the thing to do there was to not try to clean it and smooth it down. The thing to do was to get it cosmetically clean and then slap lots of etching primer and then engine lacquer on it. These are the heads prior to going off to be done. To have the valves. I think I replaced 2 exhaust valves. Or did I replace? Yeah, 2 exhaust valves I replaced. The inlets were okay. New valve guides, obviously, new valve springs, new collars and new collets. Just checking the rear end. Here's the engine on the bench, beginning to put it back together again. There's one of the Bibles, the Guzziology. Here we are, she's on the assembly bench now. Now we've dropped the frame on, put the frame rail in, got the gearbox on. And now we've got wheels, and it's beginning to look like a motorbike. A bit more there, a bit more going on. You can see the back shock is totally buggered, it's completely rusted up, but just put on there for assembly. Getting closer and closer. Here we've got the tank and the fairing on. I wanted a simple paint scheme on this bike with just generic enamel paint that I could fix at any particular time. Didn't expect the tank to last very long. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with the bike. Here's the bike, front fairing on. Begins to look like an SP now. King and Queen seat was butchered. I took a carving knife, cut the sides off, leveled the top off, stuck some foam on top, made it a little taller. And here she is in almost the same state she is now. I put more foam on top of that and used an old vinyl chair to make a cover. It was actually a brown chair, but I painted it black with vinyl paint. So there we go. That's a 1000 SP from 1979, and here she is again. Right, so what was the rationale behind this bike? Well, this bike I wasn't sure that I was going to even rebuild it. I thought I might be stripping her down and flogging the parts or something, but I think it was too good. Would I do it again? Probably not. But I wanted to restore a Guzzi. I wanted to get inside one of these older Guzzis and find out what it was like. And I wanted to do one or two other things to it. if you look at the bike, the paint job is not very flash, which is kind of deliberate. I didn't want the bike to draw attention because I decided this was going to be an all year round bike. This was going to be a general hack. It's not a high value bike. Even a good one is of these 1000 SPs is not worth as much as other bikes because it's not a very popular model. But it's still basically your Tonti frame, you know, the nice Tonti frame with a good big bore engine. Good brakes. It's got Brembo brakes. It's got alloy wheels, which in this case I'm running tubeless. I've put Avon Road Rider tires on and just using them without tubes. I was recommended to do that by the local tire guy, who is a motorcycle specialist, and he's also a Moto Guzzi fanatic. So he told me to do that. It's worked good. The bike was stored for 2 and a bit years. The back went down about 4 pounds. The front went down 10 pounds, which is as good, if not better, than some of the motorcycles I've got with inner tubes, because they all lost air over that period of time. Yeah, so that's that. I wanted a nice dark blue, like the old-fashioned police cars in England. It didn't turn out quite that way. It turned out more of a lighter blue, but it's good for now. I will be getting another tank for this bike sometime, and when I get a good tank, then I will decide on the color scheme, and it'll probably be blue again, but a lighter blue, like the new new V7 Moto Guzzi 850s, and indeed my Eldorado back in Canada. I really like that blue. Okay, so the brakes were renewed. The calipers, front and rear, were rebuilt with new seals, new pistons. The bores were okay on them. It's got twin discs on the front, and the disc is very much, well, it is identical to the disc on my Eldorado back in Canada. They're good brakes. There's no way around it. Probably the best brakes of the era. These were fitted to lots of bikes, including Nortons, I believe some Triumphs, Ducatis, etc., etc. But I decided to go with these stainless steel braided lines. So I got the parts and pieces from Van Hill here in the UK and built my own. Very simple thing to do. Very, very simple. So I did away with the rubber hoses and the solid steel brake pipes, and went with stainless steel braided all the way to the master cylinders without any joins at all. Now then, this bike is somewhat peculiar or unique, whichever way you want to look at it, in so much as the rear brake and this front brake are linked, and they're operated from the foot lever on the other side. The handlebar lever over there works the right hand disc on this bike, and the braking effort, front and rear, is controlled by this thing, which is the proportioning valve. You'll notice that there's 3 hoses go in and then 2 come out. So 1 hose comes in from the master cylinder, and then the brake fluid is proportioned front and rear, and it works quite well once you get used to it. It does take a lot of getting used to using that back brake in preference to the front, but it's not something you'd want to do on, say, extremely loose surfaces, but you do get used to it, and I do find it very good on the road. You don't have to have this system. You can delete it if you wish, and you can run the rear caliper straight from the brake pedal, and then you can have the front brake lever operating both discs if that's what you want. Right, other work on this bike: the rear shock absorber, they were knackered on the originals, and at the time I didn't particularly want to spend a lot of money on shocks, because the Moto Guzzi ones were about £400, and I ended up getting these upon the recommendation of Monty at Monty's Classics, and he said the guys who make show bikes, they stick these on made in Taiwan Girling lookalikes, 75 quid, take a risk, and actually they're quite good. And the reason you have to use these, they're for a BSA Rocket 3, the early one with the Flash Gordon Space Guy silencers on. They're a little bit longer and they fit right on, so that's a good tip if you want some cheap shock absorbers. I debadged the bike because I don't like the Moto Guzzi badges of that period. I think they look kind of chintzy, so I went with the Gambalunga eagle that was on the 1949 Racer. I particularly like that eagle symbol, and the eagle is the symbol of Moto Guzzi. And you know, it's badged on the top of the engine, so you don't really need any more badges, you know. People do ask me what kind of bike it is and who makes it, and I say Moto Guzzi. Well, who makes those? Well, Moto Guzzi make those. Anyway, none of it. Starter motor was rebuilt by a local firm and then rebuilt again by me because they fitted the wrong solenoid on there, so I won't make that mistake again. I generally try to rebuild all my electrical stuff myself. It's not super complicated. You can find a place where you can get all the parts from. The engine, like I said, the heads were redone. I was very lucky as regards the bores. They were standard, so a new set of rings went in. I had to replace 2 cam followers. 2 of them were pitted. The other 2 were okay. Camshafts were fine, or the camshaft was fine. Put new big ends in. They were standard. I probably could have used them again, but I decided to put new ones in. Front and rear main bearings were okay. New seals, obviously new cam chain, and a new automatic cam chain tensioner, so I don't have to worry about pulling the front of the engine off. This bike is different to the Eldorado in so much as it has an alternator stuck on the front of the engine. That was okay. So put that back together again, give it a good old clean. The horns, it used to have twin horns, they rusted away and fallen off. The centre stand was replaced because the bottom had rusted off while it was spending its 11 years under a tarpaulin by the sea. Like I said, I made new footrests for her, and I made them adjustable, but I made them adjustable up. Well, really I need to make them adjustable down. It's the original exhaust painted matte black. For now, I will think about another exhaust because I want to drop these footrests down a bit more, and to do that I'll need to bring the straight pipe to here and then put a silencer on, so I'll think about that for a while. In the meantime, this is okay. The seat is not too bad, but it's still a little too low for me. But what I do is I stick an old dead sheep on the top, and we go like that. You know, putting a sheepskin on any seat if you're going to travel a long distance is one of the best things you can do. Rear end, I put a BSA light on it because I like those lights. Did have a plastic thing on which was all cracked, so got rid of it. Got one of these cheapo tool holders, so that's got all my tools in. Never travel far without tools. The electrics. Moto Guzzis have a reputation for poor electrics. Now, as your major components on these are Magneti Marelli or Bosch, which is, you know, there's nothing wrong with those. I looked at it and the wires are very thin and there's lots of connectors. So I decided to rewire this bike myself. They got a bunch of colored cables and generic fuse box and bits and pieces, and decided to go that route. So looking at the wiring diagrams, they are very small, super complicated. So what I decided to do was simplify it, get rid of all the crap that we don't need, like side stand switches and 2 brake light switches and la-di-da-di-da and all that crap, and ended up with this. So if you want to wire a Moto Guzzi, hang on, it's upside down. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so if you want to wire a Guzzi, there's your wiring diagram. And these are the colours that I actually used. So relatively simple. Cut it down to basics. No connectors. Everything is connected from the fuse box directly to where it needs to be. I got rid of the handlebar controls. Put on a pattern Yamaha left-hand control for horn, turn signals, dip switch. On this side, separate heavy-duty starter switch. Got rid of the plastic twist grip and all the dingly-dangly bits. Put a Triumph, or a British style, I can't say Triumph, British style twin pull throttle on it. And these are actually Triumph Bonneville throttle cables. The choke I moved from the carburettor up onto the handlebars to make it more like my other bikes, which have a choke lever here. So on all the bikes I have, back is choke off, forward is choke on, which is better than the original choke because that's either on or completely off. With this one I can give it a little bit of choke if I want to. Now the dash is different in so much as I got rid of all the chintzy little Moto Guzzi warning lights, and I simplified them and put British style warning lights on here and just a simple switch for the lights. So we've got the turn signals indicator, we've got main beam, we've got neutral, we've got oil pressure, and we've got the charge light. The controls are the rest of the gauges are the voltmeter here, which is very useful. Obviously the speedo, rev counter, and here where there would be a clock, I've got an additional switch for lights. So when I turn my lights on, that gives me a pilot light or running light, and then that gives me headlights, and then I've got main and dip there. Okay, so that's pretty much it. The fairing is the original SP fairing, which is very specific to this model, although they did a smaller one on one of the small block bikes. Supposed to be wind tunnel tested in their wind tunnel, and when I first went out on it, I was horrified at the amount of buffeting. It was absolutely terrible. But what I did was I put this little extension on, which is sort of similar to those extensions you can buy from Pewage or one of the, get them off Amazon from the Chinese, but whatever. But I happen to have a bit of plexiglass, bit of perspex, so I just made this up one afternoon, and actually it works fantastically well. So it's nothing that anybody else can't do. Had to move the mirrors. Mirrors here are totally useless, and like I said, I don't think I mentioned I moved the handlebars. I put big handlebars on because she had very short handlebars that came out here. And I was crouched over, sort of cafe racer style, and it was excuse me, it was incredibly uncomfortable. And so I put some I believe they're desert racing bars. I'm not quite sure what they are. I'm going to change them because I put them on and then they sort of came back here too far, so I got a bloody got a piece of pipe and bent them to where I thought they should be. And these are comfortable right now, but I do need to smarten it up a bit. So I will change those handlebars at some time or other. Put bar ends on. These stadiums, these black stadiums are really good. If you've ever suffered the old-fashioned stadiums, the silvery flippity-floppity ones, which are absolute crap, these are 1000% better and actually give you a pretty good view behind you. So that's it. I mean, that's the old girl. She is by no means posh, no means fancy. She does everything I want to do. I've got a battery disconnect here, which I tend to put on all my bikes now. So it's sort of like a rally competition thing where you can take the plug out if you want. There we go. So that can come out. Put that in your pocket, and unless somebody's got one of these, they're not going to fire this old girl up and get her going in a hurry. So yeah, so here we are, another creation. Wasn't a super expensive bike to rebuild. Moto Guzzis are well catered for as far as spare parts go. In here in England, it's Guzzi bits. They're very good, and there are one or two on the continent. But because of Britain leaving the European Union, it's kind of harder to deal with those people. I think as time goes by, they will get better. But yeah, so let's put this back in if I can find it, and we'll start this old girl up. Get in here, bugger. I'll have to go around. There we go. It's a bit of a fiddle. Excuse me, I'm just getting over COVID. I've got an awful lot of lung power at the moment. Gas is on. A bit of choke. Let's see if she will start. Open the door, I don't want to get gassed. So there we go, that's the old girl. She is a 1979 Moto Guzzi 1000 SP, sometimes known as a Spada. Don't know if I mentioned it before, but this bike you can run in England. She doesn't need road tax, she's free. She doesn't need an annual safety check, she doesn't need the MOT test. She's a historic vehicle, and best of all, you can run it on a black and silver number plate on the rear. So for people who run modern bikes with those, hey man, I've got the real thing. And with, I don't know what the horsepower is, about 60, maybe over 70, I'm not quite sure. High 60s, low 70s. She's got a good amount of power for the road, 948cc, disc brakes front and back, good gearbox, nice 5-speed gearbox, shaft drive, that shaft, universal joint I rebuilt on this one, the rear end was fine. So yeah, she'd be good to go for a few thousand miles with that shaft drive, no change to mess about with. Yeah, all in all, a rather nice bike. Completely different feel to the Eldorado. The Eldorado is very old school. It feels like the bike is underneath you, but you feel part of the bike. This one you feel like you're perched on top a little, but she does feel very solid and handles well. And I don't see why this bike shouldn't do, you know, another 40,000-50,000 miles without any further major work done on her. She's got about 64,000 miles on her, I think, already. Yeah, 64,076. So yeah, you can tell I've been riding her because she's got mud on the wheels. She's completely legal for the road, insured, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, a rather nice bike. Long term, she's going to be changed. She's going to be more of a custom long distance traveling bike for European trips, I think, if I can manage to come over once in a while. Perfect basis for that, with the Tonti frame. The Tonti is a very well handling frame. There's a Swiss or German guy, he builds specials, and he reckons a Tonti frame on these is good for 150 horsepower. Well, if I could build a 100 horsepower bike, I think that would be the ideal machine. Reasonably light, beautiful torquey V-twin, and like this one even has got the small valves and the ordinary cam in it. If it had a better cam and it had the big valve, was sort of like more like the Le Mans, I'm sure we could get 100 horsepower out of it without too much trouble. So there we go, something a little different, not too posh, not too fancy, a workman-like bike. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's rather a long one. I suppose most of you have gone by now and got bored, but until next time, it's goodbye from him, goodbye from Guzzi Dog. Take care of yourselves, look after one another, and from deepest, darkest, storm-ridden rural England, bye for now.